In the American town of Oak Ridge, a mysterious disappearance spread a state of fear and terror in the hearts of the town's residents. James Anderson, a 25-year-old software engineer known for his gentle nature, disappeared without a trace on a cold winter night. The last time anyone saw James, he was at a local bar, where he had gathered with his friends to celebrate the end of the work week. As the night progressed, heavy snow fell on Oak Ridge, turning the quaint town into a winter wonderland. James left the bar around midnight, said goodbye to his friends, and took a taxi home. Days passed, and the anxiety deepened as James failed to return calls or messages. His family and friends joined local law enforcement to search for him, braving harsh winter conditions. The investigation intensified when a hiker stumbled upon a lifeless body buried beneath a thick layer of snow in a remote wooded area. The discovery sparked a flurry of activity as police sought to unravel the mystery behind James' death. Initial suspicions suggested it was an orchestrated incident, and investigators thoroughly combed James's personal and professional life, questioning friends and family. The horrifying realization that Oak Ridge may be harboring a killer sent shockwaves through the once quiet city. Amid the investigation, the detectives cast a suspicious eye on James's closest friends, believing that someone within his inner circle may hold the key to the mystery. Tensions escalated with the examination of excuses, and relations soured under the weight of suspicion. Oak Ridge has become a divided city, torn between sadness and fear. Despite James' quiet life, preliminary investigations have revealed that he really has enemies that no one knows anything about, even James himself. And first of all, Jack, his co-worker, who hates James and tries in various ways to cause problems for James at work until he is fired because James is smarter and more skilled than him at work. James is liked by his superiors and recently received a promotion that Jack thought he deserved, and that James got this promotion illegally. Jack had previously stolen some files from James' computer, but his goal was not achieved because James kept a copy of those files. And it wasn't just Jack. There is Christine, who has a love relationship with Jack and was his closest friend at first, and James found out that she was cheating on him and didn't feel love for him at all. But she deceived him and tried to exploit him for money, only because James has a large amount of money inherited from his father, and he also receives a large salary from his job. As the days passed, Christine began to demand a lot of money from James, in addition to her frequent requests to shop at international brands. And one day James felt uncomfortable and that something was fishy in his relationship with Christine, especially since there were many calls. There were strange numbers on her mobile phone, and when he asked her, she claimed that she was just her friend and started creating problems between them until he forgot about it. However, James was not convinced and decided to check him using spyware, tracking her phone, recording her calls, until he finally found out the truth. The fact is that Christine has another boyfriend, but his financial conditions are not good, and she handed over the money she borrowed from James to the other person. James confronted her, and at first she denied it, but she broke down in tears, confessed to him, and asked for forgiveness, but he refused. Christine got angry and threatened him with revenge because she failed in her plan and took his money. Finally, Edward, a close friend of James' father, is his business partner, who feels hatred towards James because he is sure that James's father illegally seized some money from the company, and Edward tried to get it from James' father but failed before trying again with James, who inherited this money, but James also refused, and Edward decided to take revenge. Investigators discovered death threat messages from Edward on James' personal phone during the investigations. Jack, Christine, and Edward were detained and held in prison until the investigations were completed, especially since the initial accusations were merely suspicion of killing James. As the investigation reached a critical point, forensic evidence painted a grim picture, suggesting that James had indeed fallen victim to a heinous crime. Yet, as the pieces of the puzzle seemed to fall into place, an unexpected turn shifted the focus away from murder. Detective Andrew, tasked with uncovering the truth about James's murder, noticed a strange pattern in the forensic data, a unique combination of low temperature and wind speed that coincided with the night of James's disappearance. This revelation led to a startling conclusion. James Anderson succumbed not to a crime but to the unforgiving grip of winter's cold. The truth was finally revealed when investigators pieced together the last moments of James' life, and who was disoriented by heavy snowfall and low temperatures. He got lost while trying to get home. The weather was chilling. He became the killer, and James his victim, and it turned from a crime scene into a tragic accident. In a small town in upstate New York during the cold winter months, Emily, a dedicated nurse at the local hospital, found herself caught up in a series of unexpected events that would change her life forever. One fateful evening, when snowflakes covered the city, Emily faced the harsh reality that despite the cold weather, she was forced to go to the hospital, but her car refused to succumb to the winter conditions and completely broke down. And Emily tried to call the hospital to apologize for going, but the hospital refused because some of her colleagues are on vacation or had previously apologized for being sick, so Emily was forced to take a taxi to get to the hospital. But she did not know that taking a taxi would be more dangerous than the weather outside. The driver, an eccentric person with strange behavior, was moving along the snow-covered streets with a look on his face as if he was not conscious. Emily tried to talk to him to reassure herself, but he did not answer her, which only increased her anxiety. Suddenly, the driver deviated from the usual route in a secluded and dark area. Emily screamed when she felt danger. Panic seized her, and she appeals to the driver to return to the main road. The driver closed the car, and Emily tried with her hand to break the glass, but failed. She tries again with her foot, but finally realizes that she is trapped and that the driver has kidnapped her. The driver ignored her pleas and kept his silence. When fear seized her, Emily mysteriously noticed through the thick snow a dilapidated mansion emerging from the winter fog. The driver arrived at the palace, revealing a majestic figure standing in the entrance. Emily's heart raced when she realized that the driver had led her into a terrifying trap. Inside the mansion, Emily discovers that she is not alone. There is a group of individuals, each with their own tales of misfortune, sharing the same terrible experience. After falling into a terrifying scenario, but did not realize why he kidnapped them, why are they specifically? What does he intend to do with them? As the hours passed, Emily revealed the sinister motives behind their kidnapping. He's a deranged person. He breaks his silence and starts talking to them to reveal his secret. He believes that he seeks justice in society. He is an introvert who has no relations in society, either between his neighbors or in his previous job, from which he was fired because of his mistakes and frequent problems. He always feels a complex set of persecution. One day he watched a movie and felt that the hero is very much like him and his life, so he decided to imitate him in every detail. Throughout his life, he believed that he had become a hero who seeks justice, punishing those whom he considers responsible for his failures. Emily and the others realized that they were dealing with a deeply troubled person, and their only hope of survival was to overcome him. Using their intelligence and resourcefulness, they carefully planned their escape. They learned about the layout of the mansion, observed the guards' routine, discovered hidden passages that could lead them to freedom. As the days passed, the captives became stronger and came up with a plan to overcome the deranged captor during one of his weakest moments. Emily played a crucial role in the implementation of the escape strategy. On a stormy night, Emily and her fellow captives carried out their bold plan. They hindered the captor, who became unbalanced, and escaped through hidden passages. In a race against time, they sailed through the dark passages, avoiding the traps set by the captor, and went out into the snowy night. The group found themselves in a desolate landscape, but the taste of freedom was sweeter than the bitter cold. They made a journey through the snow-covered wilderness, leaving behind haunting memories of the palace. And from afar they spotted a light, and they made their way towards it. When they arrived on the outskirts of a neighboring town, the prisoners were greeted with warmth and safety. The townspeople, shocked by their shocking story, offered them shelter and assistance. Emily returned to her normal life after she was certain that the danger had passed, and the ordeal at the mansion became a distant nightmare. After that ordeal, she remained at home for many days for fear of it happening again. She waited for the winter to end and for the news that circulated in the local news that the kidnapper had been arrested and placed in a psychiatric and mental hospital. Emily and her fellow survivors embarked on a journey of healing and recovery. She completely got rid of her fears and returned to her work in the hospital again. But that ordeal gave a lesson to Emily, who had made mistakes in her life, as if the kidnapping experience was a reason for her to change her life and correct those mistakes that were enough to destroy her life forever. It was a cold day in a small town in Washington. Clark stopped his car in front of the cafe to buy coffee, as usual, and while sitting in the car, he noticed a blonde girl leaving the cafe and said to himself, "I don't want her." Then he saw another girl walking on the sidewalk and whispered, "I don't want her either." Relaxing in his seat, Clark thought about the unusually cold winter days. Just as he was thinking about leaving, he suddenly discovered a young woman waiting for the bus across the street. She was wearing a woolen hat and her hand was trembling despite the gloves. Clark noticed her features more closely, noticed her beautiful brown hair. He smiled slyly as he watched her from the window. Thinking that she might be his next target, Clark drove to the other side of the street, stopped in front of the young woman, rolled down the car window, taking advantage of the cold weather, offered her a car ride, but she politely refused, citing the imminent arrival of the bus. Clark insisted, claiming that the weather could get worse at any moment. Eventually, she reluctantly agrees to let him help. When she got into the car, Clark asked her where she wanted to go, and she pointed ahead, saying that she would direct him. Clark introduces himself as a lawyer working downtown, laughing inwardly because he forgot he gave her his business card. "Thank you for the ride," she said. "I'm Emma, an art professor at the university." Clark, realizing his deception, laughed, thinking that she might be his next target. He looked at her sitting quietly, putting her umbrella on her lap, and she didn't pay attention to his words. She was thinking that she wasn't going to accept his offer, but the business card looks real and legal, and she was already late for work. Clark, on the other hand, was driving quietly and wondering if he had gently deceived her and thought that she was his next target, because it had been several months since a girl got into his car. Since the winter of this year began, he came up with an idea that he wanted to try, which is to scare his victims before doing his deed, and this is what he will do with Emma. So he said, "What's the problem with the weather lately? I've never seen such storms before, and with the crimes that are taking place, the situation has become unbearable. I haven't heard anything bad has happened if you haven't heard." He told her that there is a murderer and mysterious murders in our small town. Emma was shocked and felt remorse because she got into this strange man's car. He didn't find a better topic to talk about. She looked out the window and said, "No, I've never heard of anyone like this before." And he said, "Are you sure? Haven't you seen it on the news? It's been going on for 2 years. Maybe you haven't heard about it because you have nothing to do with the law and the lawyer, but I do my job and I have many friends in the police." She pointed to him to turn the car to the left and continued his conversation that the whole office is talking about it so far, and the police found many bodies in the winter of the last 2 years. I wondered, how do you know that he is one person who carries out all these crimes and why they are not separate murders? And he said, "It's not too difficult because of his trademark and his way of killing. That's what makes us know that he's a serial killer. Each killer has his own signature, and it is that they commit every crime in the same way as the famous killer Ted Bundy. And surely you have heard of him. His victims were beautiful young women and their hair color is dark. And also the killer, his last victims are also women. His signature was that he takes his victims to a deserted place and kills them there and buries them." Emma began to feel nervous from this talk, and Clark was looking in front of him for the road, and she never felt safe as she has all the qualities of a victim that he talked about. And she asked herself at a loss how she could get out of this car so quickly. Clark went on to say that the killer in the city, his signature is that he kills his victims in the winter months of the year, and later the police find his victims in the trunk of a stolen car. And Emma felt comfortable saying, "That's good. That means you're not the killer. It seems that I'm safe now." He said, "No, not really, because January is not over." And she got scared looking at him and said in a firm voice, "Stop the car right away. I want to get out of it." He said, "Why, what's the matter?" She said, "Is this your car?" He stopped her laughing. "Is this because of the stories I've told? Of course it's my car. Don't be afraid. That was a joke." He stopped his car on the side of the empty road and started looking around and thought, "This place is quiet, and it's good that they're alone. He doesn't want anyone to see this woman with him or to hear her screaming." He took out the papers of the car and gave them to her, saying, "I assure you, I was just trying to scare you. I'm not the killer." "How do you want me to prove this to you?" After she checked the papers and said calmly, "Well, at least I know your real identity, and this is already your car," he asked. "And can we complete the route now?" Emma looked out the window and thought to herself, if he did anything to her, no one knows, no one hears her screams, and she said, "No, I'm not going anywhere before she shows me the trunk of the car." He said, "But if I open it and you don't find anything, what will you give me?" Emma was tired of him and she didn't have to ride with him, and so she has to think of a way to get out of the car, so she gave a fake smile. She said, "If there is nothing in the box, I will give you a surprise." When he started to open the door, I thought her chance to escape, so I grabbed her umbrella and rushed out of the car towards the box and stood behind him when he opened the box and said, "See, there is nothing in the box." Then she felt relieved when she saw the box empty and grabbed her umbrella and thought that she would only be able to get out of here by one thing. So Emma hit Clark hard on the head so that he immediately fell into the trunk of the car, but he was still conscious and felt the damp blood that started running on his forehead. And the last thing he heard was Emma's voice, which said, "You are wrong, lawyer. The signature of the killer of this city is not that the victims are found in the trunks of the stolen car, but he is the owner of the car. And the victims are not women, but sometimes the killer is one of the women." Emma closed the trunk of the car on Clark and stood in the road waiting for help after she called the police from Clark's phone, which came immediately and arrested Clark, so that the city closes the serial killer page and spreads comfort and happiness among the victims. Families, after Emma took revenge on the killer and took their right to rest their souls,